Today we're going over the best new and used graphics cards under $400. Before that, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss another video. Alright, so here's how it's going to go. First, we're going to start off with the new graphics cards, and then we're going to move on to the used market. And I'll be showing them from highest to lowest in terms of performance based on a 1440p 12-game average from the YouTube channel Hardware Unboxed. Of course, go ahead and check them out. They make amazing videos, and this video wouldn't be possible to the same quality without all of their hard work. So once again, go ahead and check them out. And then once we go over all of them, I'm going to choose what I think represents the best graphics card for both new and used. Okay, before we hop into those lists, I got a couple more things to mention. First, if you like this video, be sure to slam that like button because honestly, it helps a ton. Second, if you're interested in any of the graphics cards mentioned in this video, they will be in the description below with Amazon affiliate links, so please help me out and go ahead and click on those links. Third, all of the graphics cards mentioned in this video I consider to be pretty great value. So there's really no going wrong with whatever you choose, and at the end of the day, it depends on your personal situation and what you value more. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into that new list. First off, we have the RX 5700 XT. This comes in at a price of $399.99, so it's 1 cent below that limit. So it's going to be a really expensive card if you're on a $400 budget, but it has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 for the memory. And in terms of performance, it comes in with 100 frames per second at 1440p. And I like this card because it's the fastest under $400 on the list. But there are some issues. Now, the biggest problem I have with the 5000 series of cards is that they have some driver issues. Now, the biggest driver issue they suffer from is black screens. I see this posted all the time, even to this day. Originally, a while back, the channel Hardware Unboxed did a poll where thousands of people responded, and up to 50% of people were getting black screens and other major issues, so that is something to keep in mind. However, recently there's been a lot of development done on that side, and the most recent poll I saw had only 20% of people reporting issues. However, in my opinion, that's still a really high amount of people reporting that sort of issue. If you are going to buy this card, keep in mind there does still seem to be, even according to AMD on their official driver release, there is still issues with black screens, and it seems to be down to maybe compatibility with hardware or software, and they haven't fully figured it out. So keep that in mind. Next up, we have the RTX 2070, and I know a lot of people might think that this card can't be found, but actually you can find it new, and I saw one on Newegg for $399.99. So once again, very expensive if you're on a $400 budget, but it is doable. Now this card, just like the 5700 XT, comes with 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, so that should be enough for ultra setting textures on the most modern games. And in terms of performance, it gets 90 frames per second at 1440p. So not quite as high as the 5700 XT, but it's pretty close. Now, what I really like about this video card is that it has the Turing encoder, so it can do some really great video recording work, and it does support RTX, and I would consider the RTX 2070 to basically be entry-level RTX performance. Now, one problem I have with this video card is that since it's the same price as the 5700 XT, it's honestly a little too expensive. I'd like to see this card be somewhere around $350, but it's not a terrible buy at $400. Next up, we have the RX 5700 non-XT, and it comes in at a price of $329.99, so well within the budget if your limit is $400. Now, in terms of VRAM, this card has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6, and in terms of performance, it gets 88 frames per second at 1440p. So that's barely any slower than the RTX 2070, and one thing I really like about the RX 5700 is that you can flash it to the RX 5700 XT BIOS and get really close to the same performance for a whole lot less money. So in my opinion, this card is probably the better purchase when compared to the 5700 XT, and for that reason, I put it on this list. Now, once again, the RX 5000 series does have those black screen issues, so keep that in mind. If you are going to get this video card, there's a chance that you could have a compatibility issue of some sort, even with the latest drivers, but hopefully that gets ironed out soon here. It's been 9 months of having driver issues with Navi, so please, dear God, AMD fix your drivers completely. Next, we have the RTX 2060, and for a price of $309.99, it's a pretty good purchase, and in fact, sometimes you can find this card for as little as $300. For the VRAM, it has 6 gigabytes of GDDR6, and in terms of performance, it gets 73 FPS. Now, this is based on a different chart, a 32-game chart, so the results aren't directly comparable to that same 12-game chart I was basing all the other performance numbers off of, but a 32-game benchmark is probably actually more accurate, so these numbers are pretty great still. Now, what I like about the 2060 is that once again it has the Turing encoder and RTX support, though in terms of gaming, RTX is pretty weak on a 2060, so it's not much of a selling point, but you do get other stuff such as DLSS 2.0, like you get with all other RTX cards, and on top of that, you get RTX voice, so you can use those features even if actual ray tracing might be a little bit too much for this card. Now, one thing I don't like about this card is that I think it's a little bit too expensive. I would have liked to see it more around $250, $270 max, but it's not too bad at around $300. And another problem I have with this card is that it only has 6 gigabytes of VRAM, and for $310, that's a whole lot of money to spend to not be able to max out your games. Next, we have the RX 5600 XT, and it comes in at a price of $289.99, so once again, well within the $400 max budget. And for VRAM, it has 6 gigabytes of GDDR6, just like the RTX 2060. And in terms of performance, it also gets an identical 73 frames per second when compared to the RTX 2060. Now, one thing I like about the RX 5600 XT is that it has a pretty good price to performance in comparison to the RTX 2060. At $289 for a good model, that's $20 cheaper, and to get the same performance, that's just an overall better card. Now, once again, this being a Navi-based RX 5000 series card, it too seems to suffer from these black screens and other various driver issues, so keep that in mind. If you buy this card, you could be one of the unlucky people who gets just a horrible time. Another thing I don't like about this card is that some of the cards on the market need to be BIOS flashed to get the full memory performance of 14 gigabits per second. So you have to be really careful about which ones you buy, and as time goes on, you'll have to worry about that less and less, but there could always be those cards floating around, so you have to be careful. And another thing I don't like is that it too, like the 2060, only has a 6 gigabyte frame buffer, and for nearly $300, that's a whole lot of money to be spending to not be able to max out your games. Now, overall, looking at this list, it's going to be hard to choose what my favorite is, but I think it has to go to the RTX 2070. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people who are mad and think that the 5700 XT is the better purchase, and on paper, you're absolutely right. The 5700 XT gets 11% more frames per second at 1440p, and for the same price, well, you'd think it's a no-brainer. But like I mentioned earlier, you gotta consider that the RX 5000 series cards could give you some major driver issues, so that's something that I seriously had to consider for a while when choosing my favorite card. On top of that, the 2070 has the Turing encoder, CUDA support for applications, and RTX, so that includes DLSS, RTX voice, ray tracing, and all of that good stuff. So it just seems to be a more feature-packed card, so to me, I'm okay losing about 10% performance to get all of those features and a greater chance for stability. But hey, that's just me, so if you think the 5700 XT is a better card for the money, you can find both of these cards in the links below on Amazon. Now moving on to the used section, I found all of these cards on eBay, and this time we only have 3 cards to go over because unfortunately there just aren't a whole lot of cards for just under $400 that are worth purchasing in my opinion. Now for these cards, I couldn't find perfect comparisons on Hardware Unboxed, so I kind of had to compare them to a bunch of different sources online. So I won't give you exact frame per second numbers, but we can go over roughly how fast they are in comparison to the other cards. First up, we have the GTX 1080, and coming in at a price of $300, it's a pretty great deal. For VRAM, it has 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X, and in terms of performance, it should be roughly 4% faster than an RTX 2060. So for $10 cheaper, getting 4% more frames per second and 2 gigabytes more of VRAM, the GTX 1080 does look to be a really great purchase. Now, what I like about this card is that it has great performance for your dollar, but what I don't like is that it's an old card and it could have been mined on, so the lifespan is probably going to be a lot less than if you bought a new card, and of course you don't get a warranty. Next, we have the GTX 1070 Ti, and this comes in at a price of $240, so $60 cheaper, and it too has a VRAM buffer of 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 this time, not 5X, so a little bit less memory bandwidth. And in terms of performance, it's around 8% slower than the GTX 1080. Now, what I like about this card is that it has great performance for your dollar. In fact, I think it's probably a better deal than the GTX 1080 overall. But again, what I don't like is that it's old and it could have been mined on. The 1070s and 1070 Ti's probably have a greater chance that they've been mined on and stressed repeatedly over the years, so keep that in mind. And finally, we have the Vega 56. At a price of $215, this is a really great deal. Now, of course, it is sometimes hard to find a good cooler on these cards, so you really have to make sure you get a good aftermarket cooler, otherwise this card's really hot and loud. Now for VRAM, it too has 8 gigabytes, but of HBM2. In terms of performance, it should be around 6% slower than an RTX 2060. What I like about this card is that I think it has overall the best performance for your dollar, under $400. Now what I don't like about this card is that not only is it old, but if you don't get the right cooler, it's really hot and really loud, and no matter what cooler you have, it draws a whole heck of a lot of power, especially if you decide to BIOS flash this thing. Which is one thing I should probably mention. The Vega 56 can be flashed to a 64 model, and you can get extra performance that way, so that makes the value proposition even greater, and if you did that, you could probably pass an RTX 2060 in terms of performance, and for $215, that's one heck of a deal. Now overall, my used choice, I think it has to go to the Vega 56 because although the GTX 1080 is about 10% faster, it costs nearly 40% more. Not only that, but it's great for workstation tasks with that super high bandwidth memory, and so overall, the Vega 56 just represents super awesome performance for your dollar, even though it might draw a whole lot of power. Well, hopefully this video helped you out, and if it did, make sure to clap that like button because it does help quite a bit. And of course, once again, all of these video cards are pretty great value, so you can't really go wrong. But that's all I have for this one, and be sure to let me know what you think the best value graphics card is in the comments below, and I'll try my hardest to get back to as many people as I can. I'll see you in the next one. If you made it to the end of the video, be sure to drop a like. Every time you do so, Nvidia and Intel drop prices. Also, if you want to see more, click here. You won't be disappointed.